The first game to ever receive a perfect 10 from IGN was The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. The game changed what we thought a video game could accomplish in a 3D world, and to many is still regarded as the best game of all time. Fast forward 13 years and we have a new entry into the series: The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword. The question we're attempting to answer is, can any Zelda game ever surpass The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time? To do this, we'll be looking at 4 categories: the controls, boss design, Link's equipment, and the story. After each category, you'll have a chance to vote by clicking on which title you think is the winner and vote with your view. Official voting begins now, and on January 1st, the voting will close so we can tally up the votes and let you know not only the overall winner, but also show who won in every single category. We recommend that you listen to our presentation for each category, but if you've made up your mind, we've added the button below that'll allow you to jump to that category's voting page. By the way, if you like this series, don't forget to give this episode a thumbs up, and be sure you subscribe to IGN's YouTube channel so you don't miss our announcement of the winner. Before we start, I do want to give you a spoiler warning. We'll be talking about all aspects concerning both of these fantastic titles, so consider yourself warned. That said, I think it's time we talk a little bit about Zelda, starting with the game's controls. Ocarina of Time successfully took a 3-prong controller and somehow made one of the best control schemes ever. It was so successful that it's been emulated in every Zelda since. Years later, Skyward Sword innovated yet again by adding Wii Motion Plus controls to the series in Skyward Sword. Nintendo even said that Skyward Sword will deliver the most satisfying Zelda experience of any game in the series. But for now, let's focus on the Nintendo 64 Classic. IGN's Per Schneider was the original reviewer of Ocarina, so who better to talk about the one thing that can make or break a title? Here's what he had to say about the controls in Ocarina.
From the moment you start playing, you can tell Ocarina of Time was designed with the N64 controller in mind. The Z button underneath the controller elegantly reduces pretty much all the camera control down to a single button. You can get quick access to your items with the C buttons, the analog stick controls, not just you walking and running, but also jumping and climbing. And the controls were so different from previous Zelda games or other 3D games at the time, but they still work today.
Today we have Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword is Nintendo's second attempt to add motion controls to a Zelda title. This time they even go so far as to claim that with Wii Motion Plus on their side, it nails one-to-one movement. That's what Nintendo said, but let's hear what executive editor at IGN Richard George had to say about the controls in Skyward Sword.
The Zelda series has always made players feel like they're exploring vast lands and dungeons, uncovering secrets and conquering the threats within. Skyward Sword finally allowed players to feel like they are part of Link's epic fights, by working in a control scheme that takes everything we've known and loved about the battles and augments them in ways that just weren't possible before Wii. Not only do players have more strategic options than ever before, the satisfaction that comes with beating an enemy is that much greater. Not only did Skyward Sword elevate the Zelda series to a new height of control and immersion, it finally proved Wii's grand motion control experiment could apply to deep, complex games.
Regardless of what we think about the controls in either title, this series is about you speaking up and voting with your views. We want you to decide which game has the best controls by casting your vote now. Out of the many memorable experiences that every Zelda offers, the bosses are amongst the most unique. These moments usually involve exposing a weakness and taking advantage of it, but defeating a boss never gets old. Skyward Sword features a plethora of unique and sometimes scary new bosses. Here's what Rich had to say about the boss design in The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword.
Nintendo is always under constant pressure to best its previous boss designs, and Skyward Sword is no exception. This Zelda adventure not only features some of the biggest bosses we've ever seen, but some of the most diverse and thrilling. Fighting Ghirahim is truly an experience unlike any other, as he simply marches towards Link, attempting to grab his sword. The encounters only get better from there, featuring some of the best designs we've ever seen in the series. Not wanting to get into spoilers, let's just put it this way. Skyward Sword features the best final boss the series has ever seen.
Now let's take a look back at the classic. Ocarina features some of the most iconic encounters the series has ever offered, but which stand out the most in our memory? Here's what Pear had to say about the boss design in Ocarina of Time.
Many of the bosses in Ocarina of Time were designed around the fact that we'd be facing them in a 3D space for the very first time. Unlike the old 2D games where you see everything from the top down, fighting King Dodongo, Volvagia, or Phantom Ganon meant actively looking around the arenas to track and defeat them. How amazing was it to stare at the paintings and see Ganon and his horse leap out right at you? And of course, each boss built upon Link's latest items or skills, making the player really feel like they were learning with each fight and becoming a true hero.
Now it's once again time for you to decide. Do you prefer the boss design in Skyward Sword, or does the Ocarina of Time have an edge in this category? Cast your vote now. Link's equipment. The Master Sword and Hylian's Shield are probably two of the most recognizable items from the Zelda series as a whole, but we're looking at everything. Much was established before either of these games came out, but each still brought something new to the table, like horses to roam the land and birds that soar through the air. Here's what Pear had to say about all the equipment you get during your adventure in Ocarina of Time.
I remember how cool it was to use classic Zelda items like the hookshot, boomerang, or the bow in a 3D world for the very first time. But there were so many awesome new things as well.
The Stone of Agony, for example, lets you literally feel the secrets with a rumble pack.
Deflecting light with a mirror shield, or finding a hidden entrance with a lens of truth. And just when it was about to get tedious to get from one end of the map to the other, you get a horse. Unforgettable moments? All of them.
Now that we've heard what the classic has to offer, let's talk about the modern day title. In Skyward Sword, we get a change in our transportation and a new set of tools to reach our goals and discover secrets. Here's what Rich had to say about the various items found in Skyward Sword.
One of the smartest things Skyward Sword did was carefully measure how Link's equipment is used. Virtually all of your inventory is necessary as you progress to the final dungeon. Whether you're using the beetle to fetch items or cut through rope, using the gust bellows to blow away dirt to discover secrets, or using your trusted bow and arrow to hit switches, most of Link's arsenal serves many purposes. And I didn't even mention the sword and the shield, which can be augmented in various ways throughout the adventure. All in all, this is the most diverse and extensive use of Link's arsenal that we've ever seen.
Now we want to know what you think. Get ready to cast your vote now. Finally, the story. The princess has been kidnapped and you need to get prepared, grab a sword, grab a shield, and obviously, go and save her. With Skyward Sword, there's a few more polygons to work with and a lot more disk space, but can it manage to surpass the emotion conjured up by Link's adventure on the Nintendo 64? Here's what Rich had to say about the story in Link's latest outing on the Wii.
There is no comparison here. Skyward Sword's story is unmatched in the Zelda series, setting a new high mark not only for Link's adventures, but Nintendo as a whole. What starts as a tale of two friends in the sky turns into something much, much more that Zelda fans will find stunning. Particularly important is the way Nintendo tells this epic tale. Zelda has never seemed so interesting. Even the robotic Fi is memorable, supplementing the core narrative perfectly. Nintendo also outdoes itself in terms of cinematics, bringing the Zelda universe to life in a truly stunning and moving way. Skyward Sword sets a new standard for Nintendo's storytelling abilities.
Now let's go back to the year 1998. The story hasn't changed much, but do Ocarina's storytelling methods still hold up today? Here's what Pear had to say about the overall story told in the classic.
Ocarina of Time borrowed a lot of elements from Link to the Past. But the ability to jump into the future to see Link all grown up really made the adventure come into its own. In a way, the game served as a reintroduction of the classic Zelda lore. The underlying story was simple: gather friends to unlock the power of the gods, take down Ganon, and so on. But it had a cool little Back to the Future element to it as well, where you saw a ruined future and tried your best to prevent it.
And now we want you to decide which Zelda story had a greater impact on you. Get ready to cast your vote now. That's it for this episode of Versus, featuring The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Be sure to check back on IGN.com after January 1st to see who the winner is, or be sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss it. While you wait, let us know what you thought of this feature by giving us a thumbs up or thumbs down on this video. Until we announce the winner, I'm Destin Legary for IGN.com, and that was Versus.